I had just sold my chain of medical clinics, Pacific Coast Medical Group, for $45 million. After 38 years of building it from a single storefront practice in Koreatown to 12 facilities across Southern California, I was finally done. To celebrate, my son David insisted on throwing a private dinner party aboard his friend's yacht, docked in Marina del Rey. I should have known something was wrong the moment he volunteered to organize anything. I stepped onto the deck of the Serendipity at 7 in the evening. The Los Angeles skyline glittered behind us, and the Pacific stretched out like dark glass. David was already there with his wife Jessica, both dressed like they'd just stepped out of a luxury magazine. My son was wearing a suit that probably cost more than I spent on clothes in a year, and Jessica's dress had that expensive shimmer that screamed designer label. They greeted me with champagne, and smiles so bright they almost hurt to look at. "Dad, congratulations," David said, pulling me into a hug that felt rehearsed. "You deserve this. You worked so hard." Jessica kissed my cheek, her perfume overwhelming. "Dr. Chen, we're so proud of you. This is your moment." I forced a smile, but I couldn't stop hearing Patricia's voice in my head. My wife had been gone for 2 years, lost to pancreatic cancer, but her warnings about Jessica echoed in every interaction. "David chose a woman who sees life as transactions, Marcus," she told me a month before she died. "Watch your son. Watch what she turns him into." I dismissed it as the paranoia of illness, the bitterness of a mother watching her son pull away. I was wrong. The yacht's crew served us an elaborate meal. There were a dozen other guests, mostly David's friends, people I had never met. They congratulated me with the empty enthusiasm of strangers at a networking event. But there was one familiar face, Maya Rodriguez. She was 28, a nurse practitioner who'd worked at my flagship clinic for 5 years. She'd been particularly close to Patricia during those final terrible months, staying late, holding my wife's hand when the morphine wasn't enough. "Maya," I said, surprised. "I didn't know you'd be here." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "David invited me. Said it was important that someone who knew you both should be here." Something in her tone made me uneasy, but dinner was being served, so I let it go. We ate. David and Jessica performed perfectly, asking me questions about my retirement plans, pretending to care about my answers. David kept steering the conversation toward my assets, my investments, my plans for the money. It was subtle, but I'd spent 4 decades reading patients. I knew when someone was probing for information. Halfway through the main course, Jessica stood up. "I need to make a toast," she announced, her voice carrying across the deck. Everyone turned to look at her. She raised her glass, that dazzling smile fixed on her face. "To Marcus Chen, a man who came to this country with nothing and built an empire. A man who saved countless lives and now gets to enjoy the fruits of his labor. To Marcus." Everyone echoed the toast. I raised my own glass of tea, the herbal blend Patricia used to make for me. I'd brought my own teapot to the yacht because I don't drink alcohol, a habit from my Buddhist upbringing that I'd never broken. That's when Maya moved. She was sitting 3 seats away, but she stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the deck. She walked over to me, leaning down as if to whisper something intimate. Her hand gripped my shoulder hard. "Dr. Chen," she whispered, her voice urgent and low. "Don't drink that tea. I just saw Jessica. When everyone was distracted by the toast, she used a medical syringe. She injected something into your teapot." My blood turned to ice. I looked at Maya's face. She was terrified, pale, her hand trembling on my shoulder. This wasn't a joke. This wasn't a misunderstanding. "Are you certain?" I whispered back. 100%. I saw the syringe. She hid it in her clutch purse. "Please, don't drink it." I looked at my teacup. The amber liquid looked innocent, exactly like it always did. I looked at David and Jessica, who were watching Maya and me with barely concealed anxiety. Jessica's smile had frozen on her face. "I am a doctor. I have spent my entire life reading symptoms, diagnosing problems, making split-second decisions. This was no different. I trusted Maya. She had no reason to lie, and every reason to stay silent if she wanted to protect herself. I needed to act, but I needed to act smart. I stood up, placing my hand over my heart. "Excuse me, everyone. I think I need a moment. The excitement of the day. It's catching up to me. David, can you help me to the restroom? David jumped up immediately, all concerned, son. Of course, Dad. Are you okay? Should we call someone? No, just need a moment. He guided me toward the yacht's interior. As we walked, I grabbed his arm, stumbling slightly, playing up my supposed dizziness. Actually, son, I need some air. Let's go to the other side of the deck, away from everyone. We walked to the starboard side, out of view from the dinner table. I leaned against the railing, breathing deeply, buying time. My mind was racing. If Maya was right, if Jessica had poisoned my tea, then I needed to switch it with someone else's drink. But whose? And how? Then I remembered. The Vietnamese tea ceremony. When Patricia and I got married, her mother taught me the traditional tea ceremony, the way we honor our elders, the way we show respect. It involves a specific ritual of pouring, offering, switching cups as a sign of mutual respect. David had grown up watching me do this at family gatherings. I'm fine now, I told David. Let's go back. But actually, I want to do something. For your mother. Let's do the tea ceremony. The traditional one. I want to honor her memory with everyone here. David's face flickered with something I couldn't read. Confusion? Fear? But he nodded. Sure, Dad. That's a nice idea. We returned to the table. I stood up, raising my hands for attention. Everyone, please. I want to do something traditional before we finish this beautiful evening. A Vietnamese tea ceremony, the way my late wife's family taught me. It's a way of showing gratitude and respect. I picked up my teapot and began the ritual, moving around the table. I poured tea into small cups for each guest, bowing slightly as I offered them. The guests accepted awkwardly, not understanding but playing along. When I got to Jessica, I poured her a cup from my pot. She had no choice but to accept it without seeming rude. Then came the crucial part. In the traditional ceremony, the host and the guest of honor exchange cups as a sign of shared respect. I picked up my original cup, the one I'd been about to drink from, and I offered it to Jessica. Jessica, as my daughter-in-law, you honor me by sharing this tea. In our tradition, we exchange cups to show we are family. Her eyes went wide. She looked at David, but everyone was watching. The other guests were smiling at this quaint cultural moment. She had no choice. She took my cup. I took the cup I'd just poured for her, the clean one. I raised it in a final toast. To family, I said, and to truth. Everyone drank. I watched Jessica over the rim of my cup. She hesitated for just a second, then lifted my original cup to her lips and drank deeply. 10 minutes. That's how long it took. We'd moved to the lounge area of the yacht. People were having coffee and dessert. Jessica was sitting on a leather sofa, laughing at something one of David's friends was saying. Then she stopped mid-laugh. Her hand went to her temple. David, she said. Her voice sounded thick. David, I don't feel well. What's wrong? He asked, but his tone wasn't concerned. It was panic. The room is spinning, I feel. She tried to stand up and stumbled. David caught her, but she was already losing coordination. Her words began to slur. I can't. What's happening? Her eyes rolled back. She collapsed against David, her body going limp. A small seizure rippled through her muscles. I stood up slowly. Maya was already moving toward her, professional instincts kicking in. But David was blocking her, physically stepping between his wife and the nurse. No, David said sharply. Don't touch her. She's fine. She just drank too much. I stared at my son. He wasn't looking at Jessica with fear or love. He was looking at her with the cold calculation of a man whose plan had just exploded in his face. Maya ignored him and knelt beside Jessica, checking her pulse. She needs an ambulance. Now. This isn't alcohol. This is neurological. I said, don't touch her. David grabbed Maya's arm, trying to pull her away. We'll take her to our private doctor. We don't need an ambulance. That's when I knew for certain. Maya had been right. The poison was real. And David was trying to control the situation, trying to get Jessica away from neutral medical professionals who would ask questions, who would run tests, who would find evidence. Call 911, I said quietly. My voice cut through the rising panic on the deck. Call them now. My daughter-in-law is having a medical emergency. Dad, no. David's voice had an edge of desperation. Trust me, I know what's best for her. We have a doctor who knows her medical history. Let me handle this. What medical history? I asked, looking him in the eye. What does Jessica have that I don't know about? He couldn't answer. He was trapped between maintaining his lie and saving his wife. One of the guests already had their phone out, dialing. I heard them say the words, "We need an ambulance." A woman has collapsed. Marina del Rey. David's face crumbled. He knelt beside Jessica, but he wasn't checking if she was breathing. He was whispering urgently in her ear, "Jessica, get up. Stop this. Get up now." The woman was unconscious, possibly dying, and he was telling her to stop performing. The paramedics arrived within 12 minutes. By then, Jessica was unresponsive, her breathing shallow. They loaded her onto a stretcher while David tried to follow them, tried to tell them about her anxiety medication and her history of panic attacks. The paramedics ignored him, their training taking over. I watched from the deck as the ambulance pulled away, lights flashing red and blue against the dark marina. Maya stood beside me. "Dr. Chen," she said quietly, "what just happened?" "You saved my life," I told her, "and possibly Jessica's too, though she doesn't deserve it." "I don't understand." "You will," I said, "but first I need to go to the hospital, and I need you to come with me." David was already in his car, racing to follow the ambulance. The party guests were confused, murmuring, starting to leave. I let them go. I had bigger problems to deal with. We arrived at Cedars-Sinai 20 minutes later. David was already there, arguing with the intake nurse. His voice was high-pitched, frantic. "She's allergic to shellfish. She must have eaten contaminated food. Just give her an EpiPen. That's all she needs. Don't run any other tests." The ER doctor, a young woman with sharp eyes and tired scrubs, wasn't buying it. "Sir, your wife is presenting with acute neurological symptoms. Dilated pupils, seizures, respiratory depression. This is not anaphylaxis. I need to run a full toxicology screen. I'm her husband. I refuse consent for the tests. Then I'll have security remove you from this room," the doctor said calmly. "Your wife's life is in danger. I'm running the tests." David saw me enter the waiting room. His mask slipped completely. The concerned husband vanished, replaced by something ugly and desperate. "Dad," he hissed, grabbing my arm. "You need to tell them. Tell them she has anxiety issues. Tell them she takes medication. Tell them she's confused. They'll listen to you. You're a doctor." I looked at my son, really looked at him. I saw the man Patricia had warned me about. I saw the stranger wearing my child's face. "No," I said simply. His grip tightened on my arm. "What did you do?" he whispered. "What did you do to her?" I pulled my arm free. "I drank tea, David. That's what I did. I drank my tea." Understanding dawned in his eyes, followed by pure terror. He knew. He knew I'd switched the cups. I turned to Maya, who was standing nearby, watching this interaction with growing horror. "Maya, did you keep the syringe?" She nodded slowly. "It fell on the deck. I picked it up. It's in my purse." "Give it to the doctor," I said. "Tell her everything you saw." David's face went from white to gray. "No. Dad, please. You don't understand. This isn't what it looks like." "Then what is it, son?" I asked. "Explain it to me." He couldn't. He just stood there, his mouth opening and closing, no words coming out. An hour later, the ER doctor came out to the waiting room. Her face was grim. "Mr. Chen?" She was looking at David. "Your wife has been exposed to a massive dose of dexmedetomidine. It's a powerful sedative used in surgical settings. In high doses, it mimics stroke symptoms, causes extreme confusion, respiratory depression. Where did she get this?" "I don't know," David stammered. "I have no idea. The nurse gave me a syringe that was found at the scene of her collapse. It tested positive for dexmedetomidine. Can you explain that?" "No, I can't. Maybe someone else." The doctor's eyes were cold. "We're required to report this to the police. This looks like a deliberate overdose, either attempted suicide or attempted poisoning. Given the circumstances, we're also placing a security hold on your wife's medical records pending investigation." David's world was collapsing in real time. I watched it happen. I felt nothing. I waited until he was distracted, arguing with a hospital security guard, before I slipped away. I went to the parking structure, got in my car, and drove. Not home. I drove to Pacific Coast Medical Group, to my old flagship clinic in Koreatown. I still had my key, my access card. The building was dark at 11 at night, but the security system recognized me and let me in. I went to the administrative office on the 3rd floor. I logged into the main computer system using my old credentials. They hadn't been deactivated yet. The sale wasn't final for another 2 weeks. I searched for one name, Dr. Rajesh Patel. He was the physician David had mentioned to Jessica 2 weeks ago when I'd overheard them talking in my living room. At the time, I'd thought nothing of it. David had said something about Patel will handle the medical side and the hearing is all set. I'd assumed they were talking about some business venture. Now I knew better. Dr. Patel had been a physician at one of my clinics for 6 months. His file showed red flags I'd missed. Previous sanctions by the medical board in Arizona, a gambling problem mentioned in HR notes, debt collectors calling the office. I'd been meaning to review his case, but I'd been too distracted by the sale, too focused on retirement. I searched his email. What I found made my blood run cold. Email after email between David, Jessica, and Dr. Patel. Subject lines like Shaw Project and MC Transition and Data Transfer Protocol. I opened them and read. With each word, the picture became clearer and more horrifying. David wasn't trying to steal my money. He was trying to steal my data. 38 years of medical records, genetic information, treatment outcomes, research findings on cancer treatments, diabetes management, cardiovascular disease. All of it digitized, all of it stored in our secure database. My clinics had been part of several groundbreaking medical research studies. Our patient data was a goldmine for pharmaceutical companies, for biotech firms, for anyone willing to pay. And David had found a buyer. The emails detailed the plan, used Dr. Patel to provide medical testimony that I was experiencing cognitive decline, petition the medical board for an emergency review of my license, get me declared medically unfit to practice or make healthcare decisions. David, as my only child and power of attorney, would gain control of all my medical assets, including access to the research database. Then David would sell the data. Not to legitimate companies, but to offshore pharmaceutical firms that didn't care about HIPAA laws, patient privacy, or ethics. The buyer was offering $200 million for comprehensive access to 38 years of patient records. But there was a problem. The clinic sale included a mandatory compliance audit. Federal regulators would review every piece of data, every patient record, every security protocol. They would discover any data breach immediately. They would trace it back to David. So David needed to act fast. He needed control before the audit began. And he needed me out of the picture permanently. The dexmedetomidine wasn't meant to kill me. It was meant to incapacitate me long enough for Dr. Patel to examine me, declare me incompetent, and rush through an emergency medical board hearing. David had scheduled it for 8 o'clock this morning, just 12 hours after the yacht party. By 9 a.m., I would have been a ward of the state, my medical license revoked, my son in control of everything. And if the drug had caused permanent neurological damage? Even better. A confused, drooling, elderly man couldn't testify, couldn't defend himself, couldn't stop his son from selling patient data to the highest bidder. I sat in that dark office for a long time, staring at the emails on the screen. My son, my only child, the boy Patricia and I had raised, had sacrificed for, had loved without reservation. He'd tried to erase me. Not kill me, but something worse. He'd tried to erase my mind, my agency, my identity, so he could commit a federal crime and make millions off my life's work. I looked at the clock on the wall. 3:15 in the morning, the hearing was in less than 5 hours. I picked up my phone and made a call. Marcus? The voice was groggy, confused. It's 3 in the morning. I know, Richard. I need you. Now. It's urgent. Richard Torres had been my attorney for 20 years. He'd handled every contract, every lawsuit, every legal challenge my clinics had faced. He was expensive, he was ruthless, and he was about to earn every penny of his retainer. "Where are you?" he asked, already alert. "My old clinic, Koreatown. I'll send you the address. Bring your forensics guy. And Richard? Call the FBI. Tell them we have a HIPAA violation in progress. A big one." I heard him take a sharp breath. "Marcus, what have you found?" "Everything," I said. "I found everything." Richard arrived at 4:30 with 2 other men, a digital forensics specialist and an FBI agent named Sarah Park. I showed them the emails. I showed them the data transfer protocols David had been setting up. I showed them the communications with the offshore pharmaceutical company. Agent Park's face got harder with each piece of evidence. "Dr. Chen, this is a federal crime. Multiple federal crimes. Conspiracy, wire fraud, HIPAA violations, potentially identity theft, and elder abuse." "I know," I said. "My son is committing them, and he has a medical board hearing scheduled for 8 a.m. to facilitate it." "Then we'll be there," Agent Park said. "All of us." The hearing was held in a conference room at the California Medical Board's downtown office. I arrived at 7:45 with Richard, Agent Park, and Maya, who'd agreed to testify about what she'd seen. David was already there with Dr. Patel and a lawyer I didn't recognize. They were sitting at one end of a long conference table, looking tired but confident. Dr. Patel was reviewing his notes, presumably his false testimony about my cognitive decline. David's lawyer was on his phone, probably preparing his opening statement. When I walked in, David's face went through 5 emotions in 3 seconds. Shock, confusion, fear, rage, and finally, forced calm. "Dad," he said, standing up, "what are you doing here?" "You shouldn't be. You're not well. Dr. Patel can explain." "Sit down, David," I said. My voice was steady, cold. The medical board examiner, Dr. Linda Morrison, looked confused. She glanced at her paperwork. "I'm sorry, Dr. Chen, but this is a closed hearing. Only parties directly involved are permitted." "I am directly involved," I said. "This hearing is about my medical competence. I have a right to be here, and I have a right to legal representation." I gestured to Richard. "This is my attorney, Richard Torres." Dr. Morrison frowned. "Mr. Chen, the petition filed by your son indicates you're not capable of attending this hearing. It states you're experiencing severe cognitive impairment." "Then let me demonstrate otherwise," I said, taking a seat across from David. "I'm here, I'm coherent, and I'm ready to answer any questions about my competence." Dr. Patel looked like he wanted to disappear into his chair. David's lawyer was whispering urgently in David's ear. I could see the panic setting in. "Very well, doctor," Morrison said slowly. "Dr. Patel, you've submitted written testimony regarding Dr. Marcus Chen's mental state. Would you care to present your findings?" Dr. Patel stood up, his hands shaking slightly. He opened a folder and began to read in a monotone voice. "I have been treating Dr. Marcus Chen for the past 6 months for symptoms of progressive dementia and cognitive impairment. He exhibits short-term memory loss, confusion regarding dates and times, paranoid ideation, and inability to perform complex medical decision-making. In my professional opinion, he is no longer capable of practicing medicine or managing his own affairs." "That's interesting," I said calmly, "because I've never been your patient, Dr. Patel. I've never met with you outside of staff meetings at the clinic. You've never examined me. You've certainly never treated me." Dr. Patel's face went pale. That's not. We had consultations." "When?" I asked. "Give me dates. Give me specific instances." He couldn't. He just stood there, trapped. Richard stood up. "Dr. Morrison, I'd like to submit evidence to this hearing. Evidence that Dr. Patel has been colluding with David Chen to fabricate a medical diagnosis for the purpose of obtaining fraudulent guardianship." He opened his briefcase and began placing documents on the table. Emails, financial records, showing payments from David to Dr. Patel, text messages. "Furthermore," Richard continued, "Dr. Chen is not the victim of cognitive decline. He is the intended victim of a poisoning that occurred last night at a private event. A poisoning carried out by his son's wife, using a sedative designed to mimic stroke symptoms, a poisoning that would have succeeded if not for the intervention of a witness. He gestured to Maya, who stood up nervously. She was holding the syringe in a sealed plastic bag. "This is Nurse Maya Rodriguez. She witnessed Jessica Chen inject a substance into Dr. Marcus Chen's tea last night. This syringe, which has been tested and contains dexmedetomidine, is evidence of that poisoning. The poison was intended to incapacitate Dr. Chen long enough for this fraudulent hearing to take place." The room erupted. Dr. Morrison was on her feet. David's lawyer was yelling about procedural violations. Dr. Patel looked like he might foam it. And David. David was just staring at me with pure hatred. "There's more," Richard said, his voice cutting through the chaos. This hearing wasn't about Dr. Chen's medical competence. It was a cover for a massive HIPAA violation and data theft conspiracy. Agent Park stood up, showing her FBI credentials. "My name is Special Agent Sarah Park. I'm here to inform this board that David Chen, Dr. Rajesh Patel, and Jessica Chen are under federal investigation for conspiracy to commit healthcare fraud, wire fraud, and violation of the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act." She looked directly at David. "David Chen, you are under arrest." 2 more FBI agents entered the room from the hallway. They moved toward David, who finally broke. He lunged across the table at me, knocking over chairs, his face contorted with rage. "You old fool," he screamed. "I earned that money. I deserved it. You gave everything to your patients, to your clinic, and what did I get? Nothing. I was going to be rich, finally rich, and you ruined it." The agents tackled him before he reached me. They forced his arms behind his back, clicking handcuffs into place. He was still screaming, still thrashing. "You chose them over me. You always chose them over me. Mom was right about you. You loved being a doctor more than being a father." I stood up slowly. I looked at my son, the stranger who wore my child's face, and I felt nothing but a deep, endless sadness. "I loved being a doctor," I said quietly, "because it meant something. It helped people. It built something good. You wanted to destroy all of that for money you didn't earn, selling data from patients who trusted me. You didn't just betray me, David. You betrayed thousands of people who put their faith in my clinics." He spat at me. The agents dragged him toward the door. "Dr. Patel," Agent Park said, turning to the physician, "you're also under arrest." Dr. Patel didn't fight. He just hung his head and let them handcuff him. The hearing room was silent except for the sound of footsteps fading down the hallway. Dr. Morrison sat back down heavily. She looked at me, at Richard, at the evidence scattered across the table. "Dr. Chen," she said finally, "I owe you an apology. This board will dismiss the petition immediately. Your medical license remains in good standing." "Thank you," I said, but it felt hollow. I went to the hospital that afternoon. Jessica had been moved to a private room under police guard. She was awake, groggy, her wrists bandaged from the IV lines. When she saw me enter, she didn't pretend anymore. She didn't cry or apologize. She just looked at me with dead, calculating eyes. "Did he tell them it was my idea?" she asked. Her voice was hoarse. "No," I said. "He took full credit. Screamed about how he deserved the money." She laughed bitterly. "Of course he did. David was always good at believing his own delusions. Did they arrest him?" "Yes." "Good." She closed her eyes. "For what it's worth, the drug was only supposed to make you confused. Not kill you, just confused enough that Dr. Patel could say you were incompetent. We needed you alive, but incapacitated." "That's supposed to make me feel better?" I asked. "No," she said. "Nothing makes this better. I knew what we were doing was wrong. I knew we were stealing. I just didn't care. David promised me we'd be rich, that we'd never have to struggle again. And I wanted it so badly I stopped asking questions." "What will you tell the FBI?" I asked. She opened her eyes and looked at me. "Everything. Every email, every plan, every buyer David contacted. I'm going to cooperate fully. Maybe they'll give me a lighter sentence." "Maybe," I said. I turned to leave. "Dr. Chen," she called out. I stopped at the door. "Did you know? When you switched the cups, did you know I'd end up like this?" "Yes," I said simply. Do you regret it? I thought about Patricia. I thought about the patients whose data David had been planning to sell. I thought about Maya, who'd risked her job to warn me. No, I said. I don't. 6 months later, I stood in the community room of Street Mary's free clinic, watching Maya cut the ribbon on our new facility. I'd used 10 million of the 45 to establish a foundation providing free healthcare to underserved communities. Maya was the director. She'd also enrolled in medical school with a full scholarship I'd endowed in Patricia's name. Dr. Chen, she said, pulling me aside after the ceremony, I heard from the prosecutor. David and Dr. Patel both got 5 years. Jessica got 3 for cooperation. I nodded. I'd known it was coming. Have you talked to David? She asked gently. No, I said. He won't see me. That was the truth. I'd gone to the federal detention center 3 times. Each time, David refused the visit. His lawyer told me he was still angry, still blaming me for everything. Maybe someday, Maya said. Maybe, I replied. But I didn't believe it. That night, I sat in my empty house, looking at old photographs. David as a child, laughing in Patricia's arms. David at his medical school graduation. So proud even though he'd dropped out after 1 year. David at his wedding, Jessica beaming beside him. Where had I lost him? When had he stopped being my son and become the stranger who'd tried to destroy me? My phone buzzed. A text message from an unknown number. Dad, it's me. I'm not ready to talk. But I'm reading your letters. The ones you send through my lawyer. Keep sending them. Maybe one day I'll write back. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I put down my phone, pulled out a piece of paper, and began to write. David, I forgive you. I don't condone what you did. I don't excuse it. But I forgive you. When you're ready, when you've served your time and done your work, I'll be here. We can start over. Not as we were, but as something new, something honest. Your father, Marcus. I sealed the letter and set it aside to mail tomorrow. Outside my window, Los Angeles glittered in the darkness. Somewhere in that city were thousands of patients whose data was safe, whose privacy was protected, whose trust in me remained unbroken. And somewhere in a federal prison was my son, learning the hardest lesson I'd ever had to teach him, that some prices are too high to pay, no matter how desperate you are. I'd built something good with my life. David had tried to tear it down, but in the end, the choice had been his, and the consequences were his to bear. That's the price of betrayal. That's the weight of justice. And sometimes, that's the only thing a father can give his son, the chance to learn from his mistakes and become a better man, even if it takes 5 years in prison to do it.